We have made it to the moment we've all been waiting for. International free agency here in the first offseason of the San Francisco Giants franchise on MLB The Show 24. Last episode was the offseason itself. We improved the pitching staff by signing former two-time All-Star Michael Lorenzen to add to the rotation, and his veteran presence hopefully will round out what looks to be a pretty deep group. A.J. Minter and Jose Leclerc were added to the bullpen along with a Camilo Doval contract extension, along with Joey Gallo and Max Kepler to the lineup. But now our focus is on international free agency, which we've been hyping up over the last few episodes, and I'm excited that I finally get to show you what an international free agency cycle will look like. A few episodes ago, towards the end of the regular season, I introduced you guys to the wheel, along with how we're going to be doing international free agency. So I'm going to be going through all these graphics pretty quickly because I explained these earlier, but if you want to pause, feel free. So of course, the wheel comes in because we're going to be spinning the wheel for all 30 teams. Every major league team will sign one international free agent, and each of those players will be in one of these tiers. For example, a tier 4 prospect is somebody who's probably going to be pretty good, 55 to 69 overall, potential at either A or B. But that player is only going to have a 50% chance of staying with his initial projection. We're going to spin the wheel and determine what the player's actual projection will be. But of course, these teams have to be smart with who they pick because we only have 15 international free agency points over the span of 5 years. So there's a chance that we spend 4 or 5 points on a really good prospect and he ends up not being that good. But on the flip side, we might not spend a lot on a prospect and he might end up being a gem. We're not going to spin the wheel for all 30 teams on camera because we could literally be here forever. So I spun it for the other 29 teams off camera, and I put all the results in a Google Sheet in the description, and we'll gloss over them today. We will do a live spin for the Giants international free agent because, well, we need some suspense with our own team, of course. I hope all of this is simple enough for you guys to understand. I tried to color code as many things as possible. That way you guys could be able to figure out all this information pretty easily because we're going to be going through a handful of numbers today. So let's not waste too much more time and let's get this show on the road. We're going to be doing this in order of position groups. We're going to start with the pitchers, then we're going to go through the infielders, and then we are going to go through the outfielders. So let's start with the pitchers, and I will say most of these guys ended up not having their ratings changed. For example, both of the 5-point pitchers each ended up staying as 5-point players. Their teams ended up getting lucky. We'll start with Alejandro Ordonez, the big 6'7", 220-pound lefty who ends up with the Texas Rangers. He will be an A potential, specifically coming in as a 66 overall with 94 potential, which is one of the highest marks in this international free agency class. The Rangers are getting a total stud. They have to spend 5 international free agency points on him, but it looks like it'll be worth it considering that he is going to live up to his potential. Pastor Santos will be going to the Toronto Blue Jays. He is a 69 overall, nice, with 93 potential. He's more of a relief pitcher right now. He's one of the older international free agent prospects here at 22, but he's also one of the most ready prospects as a 69 overall. Let's now move to the 4-point prospects. These guys are still really big-time pieces, but not quite as surefire as the 5-point guys. We'll start with Diego Santana. He ended up staying as a 4-point prospect, so his rating and potential will reflect the amount that the Chicago Cubs are ultimately going to spend on the Cuban righty. He's a 59 overall, so he's quite raw, but the upside with him is really high. He's got nasty stuff, and he throws very hard. Sonu Junseo also stays as a 4-point prospect. Again, not many of these pitchers really changed. He's going to join the Washington Nationals. Again, one of the older international free agent prospects here at 22 years old, but he's also one of the more pro-ready ones, again as a 69 overall. Nice. He'll be able to compete for a spot in the Nationals rotation pretty early on, I feel like, considering their rotation is obviously lacking. All right, let's get to where things start to get interesting. The 3-point prospects. We did have some movement here. We'll start with Jesus Calendentores, who signs with the Mets. And you'll notice his player card is quite interesting. He is not good at all, but he throws absolute gas. I was kind of hoping he would land as a 5 or even possibly a generational 7-point prospect on the wheel, but ultimately he will stay as a 3-point player. His upside is interesting. He's obviously got a long ways to go, but the potential is quite high. I believe it's an 88. Pedro Tavares, who signed with the other New York team, is kind of in the opposite boat. He's a lot more polished, but his upside isn't quite as high. All right, let's see where things finally start to get interesting. We'll get our first movement with Kyo Wang Sun. Not only did he end up going up, but he is a blue chip prospect, a 78 overall with A potential. Coming into the day, he was a 3-point prospect. He looked like one of the mediocre guys here. And now all of a sudden, he is the second best prospect in all of baseball, only behind our very own Scott Rios. This guy's going to be the best international free agent in this year's class by a landslide. The South Korean lefty is dominant. He's going to be able to compete for a spot in the rotation right away and has sky-high Cy Young upside. The chances of him landing on a blue-chip player was very low. To be specific, only a 2% chance, but he did it. Now, there's one problem. He's on the Los Angeles Angels. If any team knows how to waste a blue-chip player, boy, it is the Angels. So good luck to him there. The final 3-point player is Guillermo Torres, the two-way player from El Salvador. He ended up signing with the San Diego Padres, so he will be in our division, which is quite fascinating because, well, he pitches and he hits, and he does both at a pretty high level. I was kind of hoping that he would go up as well. He ends up staying as a 3-point player, which I guess in hindsight might be a good thing considering he is in our division. And the last thing we need is for the Padres to get a megastar. Let's take a look at the rest of the pitchers. We'll start with Francois Dupont. He was originally projected to be a 2-point player, ends up moving down to 1. He joins the Orioles. Sho Uehara, a closing pitcher. He ends up being a 2-point player with the Pirates. Peter Garcia Manalo moved up from a projected 1 point to 2 points. He is with the Cardinals, and Kilmer Zimmerman stays at 1 point. He joins the Royals. Let's now take a look at the infielders. We had 2 projected 5-point players coming into the day, and that starts with German switch-hitting shortstop Wilhelm Schaefer, who ended up signing with the Milwaukee Brewers. He will only be a 4-point player, so he ended up going down 1. His B potential isn't as exciting as the Brewers were hoping for, but he still looks quite good. Now, I will say the Brewers kind of have a logjam in the middle infield with guys like Bryce Turang and Tyler Black. I feel like Schaefer's more of a second baseman because he's not a great defender, but they just signed Gleyber Torres to a 5-year deal, so he's going to have to make it work at short. The other guy who is a projected 5-point infielder is Kamada Shotaro, the Japanese shortstop who will stay as a 5-point player, signing with the Seattle Mariners. He's got a smooth lefty stroke and is going to be one of the best defensive players in the majors once he's called up. His offensive game could use some work, but I think the upside is certainly there. Let's take a look at these 4-point prospects, both of which are Mexican players. We'll start with catcher Vicente Alegre. And spoiler alert, this is the player who we're going to sign. So that means we're going to do a live wheel spin for him to determine if he will stay as a 4-point player, if he'll move up, or if he'll move down. So here is our great friend, the wheel. I put emojis to describe my reaction based on where he would land. So here we go. And there's going to be no suspense at all. Right down the middle, he will stay as a tier 4 player. That works with me. Alegre's not going to move up, but he's not going to move down either. We're going to spend 4 international free agency points here in this first international free agency cycle, which is kind of a lot, but I was confident with Vicente Alegre, and it looks like my confidence paid off. He is a 65 overall catcher with 86 potential. Alegre is a switch hitter with great plate discipline. He's got a rocket arm behind the plate. The one question mark I think I have with him is, will he stick at catcher? He's a questionable fielder. He's not great as a blocker. I think he might be more fit for a corner outfield spot long term, but we're at least going to try to see if it works with him at catcher. And if not, I think he could be an outfielder long term. But nonetheless, I think he could be a really intriguing player for us, and I'm excited that he is our international free agent signing for this first offseason. The other projected 4-point infielder is Juan de la Cambiero, a shortstop who's going to join the Miami Marlins, and he also stayed as a 4-point player, which is pretty relevant because he was the other guy I was strongly considering signing. I really wanted to sign a 4-point player because I wanted to get one of the better prospects here. Obviously, we ended up choosing Alegre, but De La Cambiera looks pretty solid as well. He's got a great arm. He's super fast. I think the offensive tools are there. He's got a ways to go other than that. Jamel Arroyo, a three-point player, ends up signing with the Philadelphia Phillies. He ended up staying as a three-point player. And then let's now take a look at one of the biggest gems here. Jean-Antoine Leroux with the Colorado Rockies. He was projected as a two-point guy. So the Rockies only had to spend 2 points on him, but he ended up finishing as a Tier 5 player, meaning he is just as good as all these other top prospects. That's not to mention that he was already super advanced offensively to begin with, and now he's going to be hitting bombs at Coors Field in our division. Let's take a look at the rest of the guys here. Jacob Sandy with the Red Sox. He moved up from a Tier 2 to a Tier 3 player. Manu Van Roy moved up from Tier 1 to Tier 3 himself. Leave it to the Rays to find another gem. And then Jack Kaiser stays as a one-point player. He ends up going to the Atlanta Braves. Let's switch over to the outfield now. We had 2 outfielders projected to be 5-point guys, and we'll start with Benji De Silva, who signs with the Cleveland Guardians, and he will remain as a 5-point player, and he looks really, really good. 66 overall with 96 potential, the second highest potential in this international free agency class, only behind the lone blue chipper, Kyo Won Sun, who was obviously the great pitcher who the Angels signed. The other 5-point outfielder is Yanni Romero. He will also stay as a 5-point player, and he will also join the American League Central, signing with the Minnesota Twins. I'm really high on Romero's upside, and he's got some clear weaknesses. He's a pretty bad defensive player, but he's got a great arm. And again, the pop off the bat is really impressive. He's one of the most polished international free agent position players, already being a 71 overall at 20 years old. RJ Guevara ended up moving down from a 4-point player to a 3-point player. Still looks pretty solid. Ended up signing with the Astros. And then within the division, Christoph Hornsworth moves up from 3 points to 4 points. He already looks like a really good offensive player to begin with. He'll be signing with the Diamondbacks. Let's take a look at Miguel Cabrera, who ended up signing with the Detroit Tigers. No relations to the former Tiger legend Miguel Cabrera. This kid's only 18 years old. He moved down from a 3-point player to a 2-point guy, but he still has B potential, albeit only an 80. He's very raw, though. 59 overall. I like his speed and his contact, but defensively he is really bad, and I think power-wise he looks pretty solid. Jesus Jimenez is not on the original graphic. I realized I only put 29 players down, so I added him at the last minute. He signs with the White Sox. He's basically Eloy Jimenez 2.0, but without all the injuries. Derek Huntley, a 2-point player, signs with the Cincinnati. The Dodgers ended up getting a gem with Julio Cesar and Seco. He only costed them 1 point, but the Wheels said that he is a 3-point player, so a good pickup by the Dodgers. Everybody in our division did really well, unfortunately. William Norwood is the final player we're going to cover today. He ended up going to the Oakland Athletics, coming in as a projected 1-point player, and he only finishes as a 1-point guy. And with that, our first offseason of international free agency is now in the books. Let me know what you thought of this down below in the comments. I'm certainly open to hearing criticism because I want this to be as fun for you guys as possible. I hope all this made sense and it wasn't super complicated. Here's a final look at all of the results, and the link to this Google Sheet is in the description if you want to take a closer look there. So that'll wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Very excited about the new additions to our league, and now our farm system's looking really solid. Vicente Alegre is the second-ranked prospect in the system, and that's not to mention we had the 4th overall pick in this year's draft, so the farm system is going to be adding some big-time talent. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Next episode, we will be kicking off season number 2, going through spring training and opening day, so that should be a lot of fun. Peace out.